Good evening, everybody. How's it going? It's Comic Crack here with our Sunday hangout. Thanks for tuning in. If you were around this afternoon for our chat, we had our Sunday chat on my channel. Myself, Damian Rasa, and extra special guest Mr. Gore Vidal came to hang out with us for, I think we went about 3 hours this week. So it was great. We had a really good time. It was nice to see him, nice to have him contribute. The chat is always phenomenal. So if you want to watch that back, definitely go back and check out that video. So just to kind of wrap up what I read this week, we all kind of, when we have 4 people on, there's not as many books that each of us can talk about. So I have quite a few that I didn't have a chance to mention on the show this afternoon. So we'll get to those first, and then we'll kind of end. Yes, G, how you doing? Yeah, Mr. Vidal was there with us. Well worth a listen back. It was really, really great. He kind of had us all in the palm of his hands every time he started speaking. There was a hush across the crowd. It was really, really cool. So I wanted to, I guess we'll probably just get into it. We this weekend, my son and I rewatched, or I rewatched rather, Blue Velvet. We went into some Criterion, and we, right now, dual, just have my voice dual, just stereo, one in the left, one in the right. So we watched Blue Velvet. He hasn't seen it. I've seen it a long time ago. It's kind of back in our Criterion. We've also been watching some David Lynch stuff too. We still have to get through the final season of Twin Peaks. We watched at least the first episode, and we just haven't continued. I got to say, revisiting Blue Velvet was absolutely incredible. It's even, pardon me, it's even better than I remember it. From the opening kind of title sequence, the incredible music from Angelo Badalamenti. I always associate his films, and especially Angelo's music, a certain way, and that the kind of lushness to this opening credit scenes, like a classic 50s movie or something, with the velvet kind of curtain floating around in the background. What a movie. It was just really fantastic to watch again. I'm so glad that we sat and checked that out last night. The Blu-ray from Criterion has a boatload of extras behind the scenes. I think some alternate takes of stuff, or maybe scenes that got edited. So really very cool. And that's the thing, G. It's always interesting. Like the first time Earl Grey showed his face on camera, first time we see Gore Vidal, like it's something, to see these people after kind of feeling like you get to know them a certain way for so long. It's always that weird kind of, you have this picture in your head and then you see them in person. So it's nice to kind of match a face to the voice for sure. So that was about it for the movie side of things this week. Music, there's always good music. There's a woman out of Calgary, and I'm blanking on her name, and she just did a really incredible solo album that's electronics, and it's a really tense piece of music, especially the first couple of tracks. Unfortunately, the name, I'm blanking on the name. And that's about it. So we'll get into, I'll find this name, and then we'll get into Miriam Sirvan is her name. Sirvan is how you spell the last name. And the album's called Feast on My Body. Well worth checking out, especially if you're into some of the more weirder side of things. The first 2 tracks, like I said, really set an impressive tone for the whole album. And she is right now based out of Calgary, Alberta. So check her out on Bandcamp there. So the stuff that we didn't talk about this afternoon, we'll just jump right into it here. Damien had spoken about this. He picked it up. So I'm a huge Cowboy Bebop fan. I love the anime. I really disliked the show. We never even finished it. I think we watched 2 episodes, and we didn't revisit it. So seeing that there was a comic out there, I think it's going to be a 4-issue miniseries. I still wanted to give it a shot just to see what it would be like. And I was pleasantly surprised. So there's, before we go any further, there's the credits. So Dan Waters, artist Lamar Matherin, colorist Roman Titov, Richard Starkings, and this is Titan Comics out of the UK. This was a lot of fun, actually. I was never really 100% behind the idea of doing a live action out of Cowboy Bebop. One of the things that I think they got wrong in the show is kind of still keeping that type of anime type of dialogue for live action characters. I don't think it translates very well, and it gives it this odd feel. The visuals were okay in the show too, but it was really, I'm more got a kick out of it as a guy who loves the anime. I couldn't believe that this was kind of hitting North America on a Netflix series. But I would say that this comic really captures that the style of the anime a lot more. I will say though, there's Spike Spiegel. I'm not a fan of that character design there, but overall, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. A lot of fun, a lot of these crazy poses, again, right from the cartoon, right from the series itself. These really high leg kicks and lots of cracks, which is really great. A bit of violence, and yeah, I'm absolutely on board for the 4 issues. We do get our, if you're familiar with the anime, that's like identical. That's identical to the kind of the show that they always watch to find out their bounties. So that's amazing. Nothing much else to say about this. Uh, you're not expecting, hopefully, you're not expecting some mind blowing kind of storytelling or comics here, but it's fun. It's just a plain, simple, fun book. So that's Cowboy Bebop. Something that I got yesterday, which I was very curious about, the black, white, and red stuff. It's absolutely getting overplayed. I black, white, and blue, black, white, and yellow, black, white, and red Sonya, et cetera, et cetera. A million people, but I'm a sucker, so I had to at least try out one issue of Elektra, black, white, and gold. And this is one of the variant covers that they got. Hello, Scott Connor. Beautiful, beautiful cover. So this has 3 short stories in it. Let's get the credits there. So Red Dawn, Charles Soules, the writer, Mark Bagley, penciler, John Dale, inker, Edgar Delgado, color. Not the Devil is Leonardo Romero, and the Crimson Path, Declan Shalvey and Simone Darmé. Out of the 3, yeah, the art, and I mean the art throughout this whole thing is really just beautiful stuff. The stories are interesting. Um, Almost kind of treats her, especially with this first story, almost treats her like this horror hostess kind of thing. So it starts out, she's attacked by some vampires, and she is going to turn, and what that means, what her decision is. She kind of makes this decision to still kill these vampires, and I won't go into anything further than this. I thought it was a pretty good wrap up to the story. A bit of a surprise. I love that page quite a bit. So it was kind of a nice, quick intro. Let's flip past so I don't accidentally spoil anything. This next one, let's go to this page so we don't give anything away from the previous one. So this is the second story here, Not the Devil. And again, a really nice visual style. This story didn't do much for me. Gangsters, drugs, Elektra, just cutting people open. One of the things that I thought was really fucking ridiculous, and it's also based on, just kind of what we've now read, if you've read the transcripts from the Mouse, from the Tennessee School board there, talking about Mouse and the issues that they had with it, specifically the language and the nudity. This really illustrates that kind of point too. How am I going to show this? Let's do this and just be very careful. So the whole story starts out with the scandal, guns on a table, all of the gangsters' throats slit, like literally throats slit. Even if you go to the next pages, you're seeing swords going right through people's heads. You're seeing heads cut off, all sorts of stuff, right? And again, it's very cartoony violence, but it's violence nonetheless. And then in one of the final panels on that first page, what do we get? Let's see if it'll focus. I'm really trying not to spoil that previous story, so I apologize. Um, anyway, it doesn't seem to be focusing. No. Well, anyway, it has 4 stars. They kind of censored out the word shit. So again, it really illustrates the point to me of kind of how fucking absurd this whole thing is. Like, if you're going to, I don't know, man, it's just this focus on violence is okay, but God forbid you see someone writing the word shit or you see a nipple. Um, so fucking, I don't know, man. It really is just completely asinine and arbitrary to me. So the second one, like I said, the art is pretty great. It didn't. This story was probably my not my least favorite. Yeah, out of the three, probably my least favorite out of the three. But there's a couple of panels like this that are really nice touches. And then the final story had the my favorite art of the whole thing. And this one, hello AFPC, how are you? Yeah, I mean the limited color palette works for sure, Scott. I do like it. Um, wasn't too crazy about the story in this one, but the art was really nice. Sort of Elektra in this role of protector of spirits or parts of her, kind of transcending our planet or our Earth or reality or whatever. Um, Apologies. Have some government hash in my system, so I'm having problems focusing just a tiny bit. So there you can see Elektra creeping up the stairs behind her, and she's sort of made out like this Wonder Woman character, but then we see that it is her kind of in protection of herself. And then we get one of these kind of stone guards or whatever, that sort of looks like Daredevil there. She decapitates. Again, more decapitation, but we wouldn't want to see that word shit on a piece of paper because that would be horrible. What if kids read this out loud? Um, so and there's kind of the final picture. So I really enjoyed this art in this one. So um, this is Elektra Black, White, and Blood. I wanted to give it a shot just to see if there was anything here. I don't know if I'm going to keep picking it up like the other ones. I'll probably flip through the next issue or two, just to see just to see who the artists are and see if there's anything that appeals to me. Because it didn't blow me away. Not that I expected it to, but I couldn't resist at least giving it a shot. So that's issue number 1 of that. On to a couple of things that I really enjoyed. I'm loving Human Target. Really digging this series. This is issue what number 4 we're on now? Yeah, so Human Target number 4. And in this one, we get to meet the Blue Beetle, and he wanders around with him, questioning him, asks him one question basically, and Blue Beetle just kind of goes on this uh, tirade of just kind of filling in the space with his voice and answering questions that he hasn't been asked and pontificating on stuff. And they always have to go and address another crime, and fight it together while our main guy hangs out in the back and just watches how ridiculous the whole thing is. Definitely a sense from him that he doesn't have much time or interest in superheroes, of course, except for her, whose name I can't remember right now. Ice or Cold or Doctor, who knows. Anyway, gorgeous art as usual. Yeah, man, I'm with you, AFPC. Like, I really dig this story quite a bit. Really curious how this is gonna keep going here. No spoilers for this one either, but I liked his idea at the end when he talks about her and things that he's experienced throughout it. I also dug this scene here, taking him to the bar just to kind of drink him to the point of him passing out, so he doesn't have to listen to him anymore. Yeah, it's a solid book. Again, nothing too big to say about it, other than I dig it. Another one that I liked, even considering kind of the misstep of the last issue, um, which does play a bit of a part in this new one, but it didn't bother me too much. Um, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. So at the end of issue 3, we had the big fight and the guy that was killed in the house, and they left, and then she remembers that she has a child in the house. Uh, didn't like that at all. I thought that was pretty weak, to be honest. That this kid was there just sleeping, and that a mother would forget her child in the house after something like this. I wasn't buying it. It just seemed too out of place. Maybe that's a comment on something we're going to find out later. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows with this book? And I think that's part of what I really like. The thing that I liked about this one was like we've said every single issue, the visuals, and because there's a whole chunk of it where there isn't any dialogue and we're kind of in the middle of an action movie, I thought that was just so well done. There was all this kind of movement, and I don't know, I felt it. I felt like I was there for every part of it. I felt like it really translated off the page a bit. This guy running around with his camera phone and making himself very, very known that he's there. You know, he's not trying to hide. He's not trying to just kind of see where they're going. He's not trying to ambush them. He's full on like, yeah, yeah, look at my face. I'm filming you. I'm following you. I'm gonna kill all of you, you know. So I thought this car scene was pretty great. This car chase was pretty great down the back alley and everything. So fun book. Again, do I know where it's going? I don't have any idea, but I'm interested enough. I would say that some of the mystery is it's not as kind of mysterious as it was at first because you really were thrown into the deep end with I don't know what the hell is going on. Not that we know everything that's going on, but these 2 pages were fantastic as well. But it doesn't feel like there's as many questions going into it now. So I'm curious to see what he throws at us for the next issue. Yeah, so that's issue number 4 of Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. So that was the stuff that I didn't talk about today. I think. Yeah, so we'll kind of fly through some of this other stuff. I'm still really loving great coloring and all of these plain smart stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really still loving Laura quite a bit. I thought I think this is my favorite issue of the 3 so far. I really dug the small stories in here. I liked, I don't know, I was saying it this afternoon that when I opened up to this one, Irene, there's something about this imagery that reminds me of what the hell is the guy's name? He's a Japanese artist, an animator. I don't know. I'm totally blanking on it. I thought I had it on the shelf here, but I guess not. Yeah, no, I must have brought it upstairs. There's just this real kind of iconic nature to it and simplicity to the figures and just the shapes on the page. You're not getting a really dark holding line or anything. It's there. Obviously, it's not like you can't see it, but I don't know, man. I sat with this page, like even this image here is fantastic. I just really like the contrast of it and the shapes that are on the page there. But this is, I don't know, man. I'm so glad that I tried out Carmen. I'm so glad that his name got on my radar. I'm so glad that there's still stuff that they're putting out. And it's not kind of, I don't have to jump into getting his superhero work and stuff like this. So this one has a real Mobius vibe to it. Miyazaki's in it as kind of his harshest critic in his kind of story. But there's this real idea of an artist being thrown into his own work and confronting some of his characters, confronting some of his fears, talking about his process a little bit. Yeah, Guy Pillar, that's a good pull there too, AFPC. Absolutely. That's exactly right, actually. That's a really good pull. Um, so this is great. And Gore, if you watch back that video, he had kind of, this was the last one that we talked about. I would encourage you all to go and view that entire stream, but you can hear what he says about this final one and what you should do if a beautiful woman asks you to take your clothes off. Um, so this was fantastic. This woman, this relationship between a man and a woman who are just roommates. And he's an artist and he's looking for nude models and just kind of how that affects their relationship, sort of, or affects her. Nice stuff. So I'm looking forward to a lot more of these. I don't know how many issues there's going to be, 4, 5. Not really sure. So it's amazing though. He's killing it for me. It's like it was for Carmen. It really is just kind of a sit down and a focus on it. It's a different kind of focus than reading the other books. There's something more that that I just get absorbed in these stories in a different kind of way. Not that I don't with the other books that I read and stuff, but there's something different about his writing and his sensibility that I just love. So this was one that I spoke about recently in a video, Ashley Dust. Maybe it was last Sunday's video. I dove into this one, and I got to say, I really want more issues of this. So I may have to bite the bullet and order it online because I think my comic shop has the second issue. And I really need to dig into Rick McCollum. Really need to dig into him and see what else he's done. Russ Works, thanks to the great Russ Works for all the information in that last video. If you want to see what Russ wrote, please go to that and check out his comments. He always has some really great things to add to anything we talk about here, especially with the history of these creators. So the name that I wasn't remembering last time we spoke about this was Joe Coleman. There's a real Coleman vibe, especially to when you look at H.P. Lovecraft there, the dark around his eyes and the dark around his face. That's an absolute Joe Coleman. And then in a guy like this, there's an artist, Charles Dallas, who did a comic called Psychotic Adventures, an underground comic. And there's a real Charles Dallas vibe to this art as well, too. But it's stunning stuff. Detail in a different kind of way, especially when it comes to the nature element. We were looking at Taniguchi's The Walking Man this afternoon too, and there's something about these nature elements when they fill the page that I really find appealing. You absolutely get drawn into the world. There's a lot going on here. There's people that are being they're escaping from hell through this garden. She can kind of transcend different realms at will, and she has this garden that she goes to. H.P. Lovecraft is there, and that other guy, that kind of woodsman, bearded woodsman guy, and they warn her that there's people in this story because they're partially trying to catch you up to things that happened previously. Because I get the sense from Russ that this was a story that he was publishing. I can't remember if it was mini comics specifically, but publishing some stuff before this and afterwards that may tie into all this as well too. So yeah, I'd love to check out more of this. It was a dense read, but it was goddamn fun to look at, which is what I ended up doing. I have the very basic sense of the story here, which I think for some stuff like this, that's all you really need. The story is there just to kind of keep pushing you through page to page, right? So it's not necessarily always the most important thing. Two more here that I'll quickly talk about. This one I won't talk about too much. Again, we talked about it quite a bit on the show this afternoon, so I don't want to rehash everything I said. Am I still going to buy this book? 100% I am. Am I frustrated with the storytelling? I absolutely am. I like some of the ideas here. I like some of the premise in here. I find the storytelling so unbelievably difficult to follow, but I'm not giving up because I do. There's parts of it that I do really like, and I do want to see how this wraps up. This ties up. I think the next issue is the last issue. I don't know if they're going for more after that or what the deal is. And then finally, just focusing quickly on Animal Castle. So I looked online today, tonight actually. I looked on Ablaze on their website. What comic company these days doesn't sell comics on their website? I was kind of surprised, to be honest, that there wasn't a link to an Ablaze online store right through them, so you could go straight to them and get these books. There wasn't much of there wasn't much of anything. There was a comic shop locator on the bottom, but that just takes you to a generic page where you just find the nearest comic shop near you. So not even a focus on comic shops that carry Ablaze comics in your area. So I don't quite understand that in 2022 that a company like this wouldn't have a web page or some links onto where to buy their fucking books. Like, it really is bizarre because I wanted to see if I could get the first one from directly from them. I figured, maybe I do an order right from Ablaze, get the first issue, the second printing, I think Rasa was saying, came out, and then maybe try a couple of other things. So this one, G, because so did Paulo mention that he had the oversized album version. Thoughts on this? Do you like this story? This is issue 2. I only read this one. I don't have issue number 1. I'm really curious in it. I think there was some really interesting stuff going on here. I like the whole Cthulhu Hanluke. How are you? I like the whole the political kind of aspect to this. They've created their own community. They still kind of trade with the humans, basically getting rid of the corpses of the people that they have kind of killed, to some degree punished and killed, taking them to trade with the humans who you see here only in shadow and then on their backs. And then you can see in the back of the cart there all the corpses. The artist, here's the credits. Cthulhu. This is Felix Delep, I believe, is how you pronounce the name. So there's the credits there, writer, artist, and colors. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed was this play that happens in this one. This rat kind of comes to town. He's a traveling kind of showman and puts on these performances where he kind of criticizes power. He criticizes this king in this story and the forces that are kind of in support of him. And of course, well, maybe not of course, but at one point, these dogs who are kind of the security for or the authoritarians, part of that whole structure, Gestapo, police, whatever word you want to use for them, right? Approach him and say, are you making fun of our president? And he says, he kind of shoots back at them. It was just a nice twist. Some of this stuff where it feels like things are going to get intense. You have some of those tropes that'll happen. Oh, there's going to be a bit of a dust up. There's going to be this. It totally does a swerve there because he starts accusing. He's like, no, this is a fictional story. This is a fictional story. This has nothing to do with anybody. This is nothing. Do you think this is supposed to represent our president? Is that what you're telling me? Are you saying in front of all these people that so it totally turns the tide. Everybody starts singing this song that has been written for the president Silvio, and just kind of the wonderful moments, like really, really wonderful. So they go back and report it. And of course, now the rat must die. And he has this, he just has this confidence, even surrounded by these 3 dogs who are just trying to kill him, just trying to eat him, basically. Stabs one of them in the eye and then takes off. Like, that's a really great set of panels there. Really great page. So Um, I read volume 1 only. Volume 2 is on the pile for a long time. I'll wait for it to conclude before reading as it takes many months in between volumes. Yeah. Real nice story and art. Animals always make it sweeter. Absolutely. I'm taken with this for sure. I remember seeing the cover for the first one when it came out, and I just didn't pick it up. And I don't know why, and I really kick myself now because I think I'm at a point now where if I see a Blaze, I gotta just give it a try, I think. Because pretty much everything I can't think of something that I'm reading from a Blaze or have read from a Blaze that I absolutely hated. I've liked it all to some degree. I mean, there was some of the Sumerian stories there that I was reading, some of those short ones. They weren't as good as other ones, but they were still really fun reads. The art was fantastic. So I just need to pick everything up that they're doing, even though they're doing these floppies and then their hardcovers aren't much bigger. The old geezers, a man's skin, that sort of thing. They're just hardcovers and it's the exact same size as a comic. Yes, it frustrates the hell out of me, and the text in this one was excruciating to kind of read at times because it's printed so small and that there was panels that were so text heavy that they still had to make all of the text, the translated text, fit into that word balloon. So it feels like there was a couple of times they shrunk it even a little bit more to make sure it fit in the word balloon. Um, so really dig it. I would recommend it if you see it in your shop in your town. Grab it up, give it a shot because I think it's worth it. I think there's only going to be 4 issues, possibly, is what I saw when I looked on the Blaze site. I think they had covers for 4 issues anyway. So we'll see what happens after that. If there's 2 volumes, maybe it's going on. Shrinkage is never good. Absolutely right. Um, I feel like there was something else I was going to say about it, and I do not know. Oh, there was one thing that I was listening to Meanwhile at the podcast. So shout out to Meanwhile at the podcast. If you don't know that podcast, I would say check it out, especially the last episode. They go into the jumping off point being Mouse and everything that happened to that. They use that as a jumping off point to talk about a lot of other topics. I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Again, is this a new conversation? Are they bringing brand new ideas to things? No, but I think they had a really good kind of talk about it. One of the things that stood out to me, or there was a couple of things that stood out to me, but there was one thing they talked about. If the school had issues with language and stuff, why don't they just edit out those parts? I'm also on board of like, you don't edit someone's fucking artwork. Like you don't edit somebody's story. You don't edit stuff out to kind of make it more palatable to your audience. I think that's a huge, that's a huge step in the wrong direction. And from what I understand from reading those transcripts that are up on Comics Journal, something to do with the copyright where they can't actually do that. So if they want to take out a word like shit, they've actually got to keep the first letter and then do stars for the other 3 instead of completely whiting it out or completely blanking it. When I showed my wife that page, she thought it was supposed to be fuck. And you know, so it's one of those things. You're now changing the text, even though you're just taking a word out and you're showing that it's a 4-letter word that's obviously a curse word. You're still altering the text, which then has these subtle alterations. Meanwhile, at the podcast is what it's called, I think, right? Um, so once you start heading down that road and you start editing some of the work, I don't know, like, where does that stop, right? So what else are you editing that you didn't agree with? Are you just stopping at curse words? Are you just white out nipples? Are you just putting shirts on people and pants on people? You know what I mean? So where does that sort of thing change? And then what does that say about the original piece of work, right? So um yeah, so that part was interesting. And one thing that she was saying, and I'm sorry that I can't remember everybody's names, I apologize, but one of the things she was saying was also this idea of kids potentially being too young for this material. And she just made a point of being a Jewish woman herself and growing up, she was exposed to the Holocaust by her family. It was talked about well before. Yeah, exactly. I agree with that, G. Exactly right. Exactly right. Even though I know the using that, they're not specifically burning books. This is more taking off the curriculum. But I agree with, so one of the things, the arguments that's made, I think, is that some kids are too sensitive for stuff. And it's she just brought up a point of, what about those kids that are actually in that world or actually exist, where they don't really have the luxury or the choice to kind of not engage with it. I think of like black kids in America who are kind of talked about their neighborhoods, and talked about what happens if a police officer talks to you, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and are taught that shit from an early age. What about here, indigenous peoples and their kind of interaction with the school system and their interaction with society on the whole, and they potentially come from, or even inner city kids who are coming from poverty, they don't get a choice to kind of engage in it or not. So it really does feel like a bit of a situation where, if you are getting an option to engage and not engage, there's so many worries in that for me, as far as, if you don't get the tools at an earlier age. First of all, I feel sort of grade 8 is a pretty good age. I feel like at 13 years old, I feel personally that you're ready for more of that stuff. I would argue earlier, especially based on what my daughter, who's currently in grade 3, when she was in grade 2, the topics that they ended up talking about when they talked about residential school systems, and she was in grade 2. So, 7 years old, and engaging with these conversations, the reality of what happened, right? So, how are you going to be later on in life if there's been this kind of protection that's been happening from difficult material, where now you're engaged in it and you're now older? How are you going to be able to engage with it? How are you going to have the tools to engage with it in potentially a healthy way? All of that sort of thing, right? So it was well worth listening to. I think it's about an hour, but I would encourage you all to listen to it. There was quite a lot of good points made, and just more food for thought. Again, was there any debate in my mind? No, 100% not. But it's always good to hear a little more discussion on this, because, again, it's not just about this book. It's about all sorts of books. It's about what's happening online now, with people censoring people's ideas, with kind of putting in, Russell Brand had a really good video today about fact checking on Facebook, and what those fact checkers have said isn't fact. And he goes into it. It's another really good video to look at. But that whole idea of kind of censoring things to some degree, and how problematic it is, and how that changes the narrative, and how you can move something into a different context just by a couple of different things, right? So I think that's where the debate kind of comes in, how that translates to other areas when it's being done in comics, books, movies. It's not going to stop at that point, right? There's more to it than that. It's going to kind of extend its arms a little further, that idea, even if some of the kind of intricacies are vastly different, because now you're dealing with vaccines and COVID and et cetera, et cetera. But it's still this censoring that is just fucking problematic, period. So, um, read Mouse in 6th grade. Wow. Had good teachers that placed it into context. And that was the other thing from the Comics Journal transcript. They talk a little bit about the curriculum for that block, and how Mouse was just a part of an overall bigger picture. And honestly, the kind of educational block that it was a part of sounded pretty interesting. They get the kids to then engage with some older people, and basically write a comic themselves, even if it's, I think, did they have a limitation of 4 panels? I don't remember what it was, but they did then start talking to them about translating these ideas and these conversations and these topics, and putting it on a page, also engaging in a visual type of medium, as opposed to just storytelling, to keep them engaged in that a little more. The whole module sounded really interesting. And it was also a stepping stone, they were saying in the transcript, a stepping stone to what's next. When they were asked about if they have anything to replace the text, they didn't. So it was kind of going to be, well, now we need to pick another module, which means now it's going to have an effect on other ones. But some of the stuff seemed to come from a place where they were reacting to potentially what parents might complain about, which is always going to be a difficult place, right? If you're kind of in that mindset, and I don't blame them for being in that mindset, not whatsoever. I feel that it's got to be difficult as a teacher, as an educator. No matter what you do, you're going to have someone complain about it, right? It feels like it's one of those positions that no matter what choices you make, you're going to catch some heat. So you do need to mitigate that to some degree. But it also feels like in this one specifically, they were making decisions based on what that was going to be, what that backlash from some parents will be. Match that with their ideals of how they want to have their school and create these good citizens, I think. Isn't that what they said in Starship Troopers? In Berlin, there's a plaza with a monument stating something like "Beware, books were burned here," and burning people was what followed. Should be similar monuments all over Europe, actually, even if related to medieval times only. Yeah, it sounds like a good one for sure. I have a bit of a thing with monuments and statues, but hey, that's not a bad one. Anyway, I don't want to go too deep into the weeds because obviously it's an enormous conversation, which is also part of it when it came to the discussions that sometimes happen on social media. And the whole reason I pretty much stay away from these topics on Twitter, etc., because it's too nuanced and too big of a conversation to have on there. Even if you spend 6 or 10 posts talking about something, you can still never really get into the weeds of it. So it's in my estimation and in my personal opinion, for the most part, not that I don't engage in politics online at all. Of course, I read stuff. Of course, I look into things. But for the most part, I like to keep those conversations at a real long, Mr. Fantastic arm's length away from me, just to kind of not always engage, which is difficult. Shit is going south all over the goddamn place. So it's troubling at best. Anyway, okay, I really am going to stop. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming out. G, always nice to see you. Scott Connor, thanks for coming. AFPC, Cthulhu Han, Luke, and anybody watching afterwards. Like I said, please go back to my archives and watch the first appearance of Gore Vidal. Slab that video, grade it, sell it. Don't make a fucking NFT out of it, but slab it and sell it and get yourself some money. That's our market report to wrap up this week's show. Um, Thanks very much. Any parent that finds the material being taught offensive can find an alternative for their child with the instructor and administration. Their concerns shouldn't be imposed on the curriculum. Yep, I hear that. Okay, everybody. We'll talk to you next weekend. We're going to be on Rasa's channel, and we'll see you on Sunday. Take it easy, everybody.